For today's video, we are back on Tier Maker, now on number 9 overall draft picks, and this series has definitely been a lot of fun. We are now in the closing stretch though, as next episode will be on the number 10 picks, and then we will eventually finish it out with the number 1 overall draft picks. I have been saving the best for last. I'm definitely excited to do that one, but you guys know how this works at this point. We're going to be ranking them in the following tiers. We have Hall of Fame talent, and as we get up to the later picks, there won't be many players up there, and same goes as Superstar. And then we have Topline Contributor, good, disappointing, flat out bust, and too soon to judge, which is obviously for some of the more recent picks that haven't really got their feet wet just yet in the NHL. So we're going to start this off from the 2000 NHL draft. We have Brent Kron, hopefully I'm saying his name correctly, a goaltender drafted by the Calgary Flames, only appeared in one NHL game, that came in the 2008-9 season with the Dallas Stars, but he's been a guy that basically played in the AHL for his entire professional career, so I'm definitely going to go ahead and say he is a flat out bust. When you draft a goaltender that high, you definitely have, high hopes for them, and for him only to play one NHL game, that's definitely not very good, and that one NHL game definitely didn't really go well for him. Next up, we have Tomo Ruutu. Now, Ruutu was a guy who could usually give you like 45 to 50 points, and I definitely think for the most part in his career, he has been a good NHL player. His career high was 57 points in the 2010-11 season with the Carolina Hurricanes. He retired from professional hockey in the 2016-17 season. I'm not going to put him at disappointing because with that number 9 overall pick, I definitely think he did have a good career. And next up, we have Peter Trosiak, or Tachiak. Hopefully I'm saying his name correctly. But he's another guy who really didn't play in the NHL at all. Only 3 NHL games in the 05-06 season, and that was the only time he got in the NHL. He's still currently playing in the DEL, as you guys can see from his photo, but really didn't work out at the NHL level. And with a top 10 pick, that's definitely pretty bad. So I'm going to say flat out bust for him. And next up, we have Dion Phaneuf, and this one is kind of difficult because when he was in Calgary, he was one of the best defensemen in the league, a guy who was an offensive juggernaut, had a 60-point season in 2007-2008, and was a guy who, if he caught you with your head down, he was going to injure you, he was going to put you through the ice or through the boards. He was definitely a monster and a horse on the blue line, but I kind of wish he would have stayed in Calgary because then we really don't know what could have happened. But after going to Toronto, had some good years there definitely, but I feel like he was kind of a scapegoat there, and that was definitely not the greatest time for his career. And then obviously after that went to the Ottawa Senators, now a member of the LA Kings, definitely not the defenseman he once was, but I'm also going to put him in good. Had he have stayed in Calgary and had he have kept doing what he was doing, probably would have been maybe up there around a superstar, but for the most part of his career, I feel like he was just good. Maybe a top-line contributor, you could argue, but for right now, I'm going to keep him there next to Tomo Ruutu, and after I finish this, I could go back and change some things up. Maybe I want to move him up. Next up, we have Ladislav Schmid, a defenseman who played 11 NHL seasons, was never a top-pairing guy at all, but I'm not going to put him as a flat-out bust because he did play a lot of his professional career actually in the NHL. Again, not a top-pairing guy, but he did have an NHL job for a very long time. He's currently playing over in the Czech Republic still, so shout out to him for still, being a professional hockey player, but I'm going to put him in disappointing because, again, with the top 10 pick, you definitely want a player who's going to come in and at least play a prominent role in your franchise, and while he was okay for the majority of his NHL career, never really amounted to anything or the player that he was actually drafted to be. Next up, we have Brian Lee. Now, I talked about him in a video I made a couple months ago talking about the biggest bust from every NHL draft since 2000, so I guess I consider him the biggest bust from the 05 draft, and he was a guy who was never really able to stay on the ice. It was seeming like he was always injured, wasn't really getting the opportunity as a young defenseman to really play in the NHL. He did spend 7 seasons there, but in all those years, he really didn't play a lot of games. The most games he ever played in 1 year was 53, so I definitely think I'm going to put him man, this is kind of tough. I think I'm going to put him as a flat-out bust because those 7 years in the NHL, it wasn't like a 7 years for most players who would play like 75 plus games because he really didn't play a lot of games. So I'm definitely going to put him in flat-out bust. Next up, we have James Shepard. Shout out to him, a hometown guy from Halifax, which is also where I'm from and where I live now. But I think I'm going to have to put him at disappointing. He's currently playing in the DEL. His career high in the NHL was 24 points. That came in the 2008-2009 season, but was never really a top 6 guy, was never really able to stay in the NHL consistently. Still a professional player, so shout out to him for that, but definitely at the NHL level, and especially with the 9th overall pick, I'm going to put him at disappointing. Next up, we have Logan Couture, And Logan Couture is a tough one, and I'm actually going to put him as a superstar. I know a lot of people probably don't, think of him up there as one of the best players in the league, and I really don't either, but I feel like for a number 9 overall pick, you can't get much better than that, and I feel like for that reason, I'm going to put him in superstar. He's one of the most clutch players in the entire NHL. He's always the guy that's going to show up in the playoffs. He always usually gives you around 55 to 70 points in the regular season, somewhere in that range, and is obviously the current captain of the struggling San Jose Sharks. Hopefully he can turn that ship around, but it's not looking too good right now. But Logan Couture, I think in his own right, is definitely a superstar. And next up we have Josh Bailey, and I'm going to put Josh Bailey as a top line contributor. He did have one very, very good season, 71 points in the 2017-18 year. He had a lot of assists that season, obviously playing with John Tavares, but he's usually a guy who you can count on to give you 50 plus points for the majority of his NHL career. Has been playing, on the top line for that New York Islanders team. So definitely a top line contributor, just a very, very solid NHL player. And next up we have Jared Cowan, and I feel like I'm going to put Jared Cowan at flat out bust just because he didn't play a lot in the NHL, had 6 seasons, and he was done in the 2015-16 season, is currently not playing professional hockey anymore. So a very short-lived career for a former top 10 pick that really just didn't pan out at the NHL level. Not too much more to say on Jared Cowan other than I think he's kind of a flat out bust. I might change him and move him up to disappointing, but for right now, I'm going to put him down there. Next up, we have Miguel Granlund, and this is kind of a difficult one because his time in Minnesota, I would have said hands down a top line contributor. 69 points in the 2016-17, followed that up with another 60 plus point year in 2017-2018. But the last year and a half for him has kind of been shaky. Really wasn't able to get going after the trade deadline last year in the Nashville Predators organization. And now this year he is off to an okay start. So I'm going to stick him at top line contributor, but I'm not quite sure about it. I might change that later and move him down to good. But if he had stayed in Minnesota and stayed playing like that 60-point player, definitely hands down would have been top line contributor. But now since he hasn't been the greatest over the past year and a half, I'm not quite sure about it, but I'm going to stick him there for now. Next up, we have Dougie Hamilton, and Dougie Hamilton, I'm going to stick him as a top line contributor. Obviously, is off to a blazing hot start, and if he continues that for this whole season, he's a guy who could 100% get some Norris Trophy recognition. I'm not quite sure with how John Carlson's playing because it seems like he's just running away with it, but still, Dougie Hamilton off to a great start to the year, and if he continues that by season's end, I think I might consider him like a superstar caliber defenseman. He's a guy who kind of bounced around a little bit, was originally drafted by Boston, had some good years there. Then the Calgary Flames, he had some good years there as well, but now it seems like he has really found his home with the Carolina Hurricanes amongst that amazing decor. I'm pretty happy for Dougie Hamilton, and obviously he's off to an amazing start to the year. And next up we have Jacob Trouba. I'm going to put him as a top line contributor as well, kind of just basing it off of the past year. He was an absolute monster on the blue line the 2018-19 season for the Winnipeg Jets, 50 points, and was a guy that would log a lot of ice time and usually get the matchup against the opponent's top line. And obviously this year he has actually gotten off to a pretty solid start with the New York Rangers as well. The first couple of games it looked like maybe he can be like a superstar caliber defenseman and one of the best in the NHL. Has cooled down, but still he is a horse on the blue line and a top pairing guy for sure, so I'm definitely going to put him as a top line contributor. Next up we have Beau Horvat, and I'm going to put him as a top line contributor. Teams have been getting some really good value with this number 9 overall pick. You look at some of the names in this video and some of the ones down here that we haven't talked about just yet. That number 9 overall pick has been turning out to be very good for a lot of teams, and Beau Horvat is no exception to that. The current captain of one of the hottest teams in the NHL, the Vancouver Canucks, they're having an amazing year. Beau Horvat had a hat trick a couple games ago against my Red Wings. I'm happy for him. I'm glad they finally named him captain, and ever since they did, this has looked like a completely different team, and if they keep this up, they're definitely a team that I wouldn't be surprised if they do get into the playoffs, and obviously that would be very good for them after, the rebuild is somewhat complete. A lot of people thought maybe it'll take another year, but Vancouver is looking very dangerous so far. Next up, we have Nikolaj Ehlers, and he's yet another one I'm going to put as a top line contributor. A little bit of a down season in the 2018-19 season, but he is definitely bouncing back in a big way. He's currently playing at a point per game pace for the Winnipeg Jets, has been one of their best players so far through like the first 13 or 14 games of the season. Not quite sure how many games they've played, but Nikolaj Ehlers has definitely been off to a great start, and if he continues to be like a point per game player for the whole season, come the end of the year, maybe he is a guy who could be up there as a superstar. I feel like a lot of these guys can. Same goes for like Beau Horvat, Trouba, and Dougie Hamilton. They're all very young still, and they're all very good already. Moving on now, we have Timo Meier. He's yet another guy I'm going to put as a top line contributor. Obviously, San Jose off to a very, very slow start to the season. Definitely not the start they wanted and not the start that a lot of people expected. And they're going to need Timo Meier, guys like Kevin Labanc, Thomas Hertl to really start picking it up offensively if they want to have any chance of turning their season around. But based off of last season, more so than this year so far for Timo Meier, I definitely think he is a top line contributor. A 60-plus point guy in the 2018-19 season, a breakout year for him. And he's a guy who I definitely think has the potential to be like a 40-goal scorer and definitely a guy who's up there around a point per game. I'm a big fan of his. And next up, we have Mikhail Sergachev. And Mikhail Sergachev is another guy I'm going to put as a top line contributor. He's a defenseman who on most teams would probably be getting top pairing minutes, but obviously on this Tampa Bay Lightning team, you have a great decor with guys like Ryan McDonough and Victor Hedman, the 1-2 punch there. But Mikhail Sergachev, a young defenseman who can definitely put up a lot of numbers, and I feel like I can confidently say already he is a top line contributor. Next up, we have Michael Rasmussen, a decent rookie season for him in the 2018-19 season. Didn't make the team out of camp this year, is currently in the American Hockey League, but he is playing well down there, so I'm happy that Detroit isn't really rushing him and putting too high of expectations on him. I think next year he'll really be ready to come in and play like a top 9 role and get some power play minutes. And then finishing out the video, we have Vitali Kravtsov, a guy who a lot of people thought would make the NHL this year and actually play a pretty prominent role for them. Obviously that wasn't the case, was scratched some nights in the AHL, which I kind of found a little bit ridiculous, and now is heading back to the KHL, but I really wouldn't worry about that. I think he will be back and ready to go, probably with the New York Rangers next year, but taking a little bit longer than people expected, but he is looking like a fantastic prospect. And again, this number 9 pick, if your team gets it, it's looking like you're going to get a pretty solid player, especially in some of the more recent drafts. I mean, look at all those top line contributors. Even guys like Dion Phaneuf and Tuomo Ruutu were good. Obviously, that was longer ago. And then Rasmussen and Vitali Kravtsov look like some solid players as well. So I'm going to go back, look over this, see if I want to make any changes, and then I'll be right back. So I do actually think I'm going to keep it like this. I know there is a lot of top line contributors, but all these guys up here, I feel like are, top line contributors for their respective teams. Maybe not Miguel Granlund so far in Nashville, but I am giving him the benefit of the doubt since it is a change of scenery, and he still is like getting used to playing for the Nashville Predators. So that is going to wrap this up. I'm going to link this down below in the description so you guys can do it as well. And always, like I say, you can take a picture of it, tweet at me, or just let me know down in the comment section what ones you agree with or what ones you disagree with. So that is going to wrap up today's video. I really hope you guys did enjoy. This series is almost coming to an end, so make sure to let me know down in the comment section if you guys have any suggestions for any other video series you guys want to see, or just video ideas in general. I'm always open to hearing your guys' ideas. And with that being said, thank you guys so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy, please make sure to drop a like on it and subscribe to the channel for daily NHL content, and I will see you guys all in the next video.